Hello, everyone, and welcome. In this recording, I'm going to be speaking about this upcoming new moon that we have in the sign of Virgo, either on the 14th or 15th of September, depending on where you are on the planet. And also, the new moon takes place at 21 degrees and 58 minutes of the sign of Virgo. Now, before I get to the specifics of this new moon and what kind of aspect it holds, I invite you to take a look at the general astrological configuration because I do believe that this new moon has a strong correlation with it. Now, the ruling planet of the new moon is Mercury, where Mercury is also in the same sign, right at home, meaning that it's able to bring forward its highest qualities, which is the very strong intelligence, down to earth, safe and sound Virgo like logic, analytic qualities, and that tendency to view and look at everything through a very realistic lens, if that is possible. But of course, balance is always required, so not to the degree of absurdity. And Mercury also makes a very important movement around the time of the new moon because it is standing still in the sky, preparing to go direct. Now, this doesn't wrap up the Mercury retrograde season yet because we do need to wait for Mercury to travel forward on its shadow path, meaning the path it took backwards to this, let me just look, 8 degrees and 3 minutes of the sign of Virgo. That is where Mercury is going to be at the time of the new moon. So even though we're not out of the woods yet, Mercury retrograde wise, it is still a very important moment when everything that we have processed, redone, reevaluated, rethought, re-envisaged even under the influence of the retrograde, that is the moment when it truly sinks in and we can build upon it. And building upon it is so very in tune with the symbolism of a new moon, any new moon basically, because a new moon represents and favors powerful new beginnings that might need a little bit of time to fully enact, fully execute themselves. You know, the range of influence of a new moon is the time when it happens and also 6 months time. So yet one of the major aspects that this new moon holds is a trine, so a celestial conversation of supreme harmony with Uranus, Mercury's higher octave. So this can hold surprises, this can hold breakthrough, this can hold very, very quick evolution of whatever intention we set into the universe or whatever action we take at this new moon. And also the sign of Virgo is an earth sign, a mutable earth sign. And trying to Uranus, Uranus is also in fellow earth sign Taurus. So this does represent something practical, something concrete, something that might, be useful to us or serve us in a very, very down to earth way. Now, with this being said, I invite you to take a look at my screen. So this is how the new moon configuration looks like, astrologically speaking. Now, of course, ignore the house systems because these are where I live. Where you live is gonna have a totally different, house repartition, but the degrees and the aspects between the planets are gonna be pretty much the same. And before I get into, showing you what planet is doing what kind of action, I would also like to focus a little bit on the Sabian symbol of this new moon. So again, the new moon is at this 21 degree 58 minutes of the sign of Virgo, which means we're looking at 21, 22 degree Sabian symbol of Virgo, of course, which says a royal coat of arms enriched with precious stones. Now, the Sabian symbol really embodies the utility of the Virgo and Pisces axis, basically. Because if Virgo is down to earth practical, and the royal coat of arms does mean that whatever we do with our intelligence, we are responsible for it. But the royalty of it and the basically the rich gems do represent the nobility of the Pisces axis, the Virgo Pisces axis, because, in the past, world leaders, kings, nobles, big people who had a very strong influence were not just there politically speaking, but they also represented the spirituality of the people, of the place, of the country, etc. So these people, so to speak, were also spiritual leaders or spiritual influencers in that sense. A king usually represented the authority and the sovereignty of the divine as well. The king was chosen by divine right as well. And that meant that the leader, noble or whatever position, also had a spiritual responsibility to uphold the highest morality or to uphold the divine laws, or at least to take into consideration a very deep moral aspect of whatever role it is that they performed. And in the present moment, with this new moon in the sign of Virgo, a new beginning at that time has to be balanced. It has to, of course, embody all the practicality, the utility, the strong cerebral energies associated with Virgo, but at the same time, it also has to contain a touch of morality, the spirit of communion, Pisces, you know, and everything that is born, basically, it is first, conceived in the realm of fantasy, in the realm of the unconscious, subconscious, if you will. So that is very much Pisces and the Piscean expression. So even before something becomes, down to earth, very practical, something that can service Virgo, the sign of servitude, in a concrete sense, first of all, it is just an inspiration. It is just perhaps an emotion, a fantasy, something that we play within our souls as idea, as image, as, creational energy. So whatever is being born on the time of this new moon, and whatever it is that we take action towards, set an intention, or use Mercury, our intelligence, to create it, it also has to embody the purity and the sacredness of the fantasy, of the creational spark from within our unconscious that gave birth to it. So this is how I interpret the Sabian symbol of this 21, 22 degrees of the sign of Virgo. Now, moving on, the new moon does hold quite an exact aspect with Uranus. As I said, the new moon is at 21 degree, almost 22 degree of Virgo. And this Uranus retrograde, by this time, of course, is at 22 degrees and 57 minutes of the sign of Taurus. So this trine is quite exact. Now, Uranus brings the surprise factor, the unexpected, the instantaneous resolution of something. And because it's retrograde, its symbolism turns that much deeper inwards. So it can be a flash of insight. It can be an epiphany. It can be an idea. It can be something that our mental sphere, or Taurus, our value system, just brings up to the surface as a volcano, and that might be very, very brilliant, ingenious. It might solve a problem if we get to new moon, the creational part of the new moon, find a very practical applicability to it, or find a know-how or our own methodology. So this does really, really favor new ideas. Now, because Mercury, the ruling planet of this new moon, is, well, not yet direct, not yet totally out of, it's standing still in the sky, basically. Well, this can also represent that maybe the newness of the new moon can actually be built on something that already existed in our lives, in our mental sphere, as a plan, as an initiative, as a project, and we might be building upon that, or maybe that appears in our lives under a totally new format, a new way of, enacting it, a new way of building upon it. While Uranus retrograde, this can also represent that an idea, a big initiation of ours, or something that has to do with a really, really original, a really authentic idea or spark of insight. We might, get a totally new way of doing that, and hence the new moon, the symbolism of the creational power of the new moon. But at the same time, this can also represent a wrap up of this Mercury retrograde season. Why? Because, as I said, the new moon has a fear of influence from the moment it happens to the next 6 months. So, whatever this Mercury brought to the surface, may it be some things that have to do with work, with our physical health, because Pisces, sorry, Pisces as well in a sense, in a certain sense, but Virgo has a lot to do with our physical bodies, our physical health, especially the gut, the digestive tract. So some kind of medical situations or medical problems that we needed to take care of, and maybe we get an ingenious treatment, an alternative treatment, Uranus, which works much, much better than the mainstream, so to speak. But this can also represent a new health routine where we want to upgrade our physical body. We want to get more into shape. We want to change our diet. And changing a diet is also very much in tune with this new moon, because two dwarf planetoids meet in the sky at the time of this new moon. And we are speaking about dwarf planet Haumea, and also Ceres, the asteroid planetoid, more like, of grain harvest, food, etc. But I'm going to be speaking about this a little bit later on. So as I said, this Mercury retrograde can have a very strong wrap up due to this new moon, because something is born. And also before the new moon becomes exact, we can see the lunar sickle being extremely, extremely thin, and that represents the cutting aspect, the where we eliminate things from our lives that are no longer of service to us or no longer advantageous. We send it into the darkness, into the void of the new moon, because at the time of the new moon, the new moon doesn't shine. It is covered by the shadow. It is covered by darkness. So it's also really, really good for elimination, to send ideas, thoughts, bad routines, bad habits, all of these as Virgo, into the void of unknowing, forgetting. So that can also be the theme of this new moon, where we eliminate some habits, some customs, daily rituals and routines, or something from our diet perhaps that no longer serves us, and we introduce something new that is really, really complementary of us, our lifestyle, and our authenticity, the trine to Uranus. And Uranus is in the fellow earth sign of Taurus. So Taurus rules the five senses, touch, smell, taste, etc. Everything that delights us. And, in the bigger picture, Taurus is how we embody our values. So it's a very strong physical energy as well. And with Uranus in it, change, positive change, upgrade that serves us for the long term. Now, another aspect is that this new moon does hold a rather weak, rather imprecise trine with Jupiter, but we can still call it a trine if you really, really want to. And Jupiter is expansive. Jupiter is value, especially in the sign of Taurus. What we believe as value, and also Jupiter is the planet of justice. According to the ancients, it is the great benefic bestower of blessings. So this also says that this new moon is potentially really, really positive. This new moon comes in our lives to help us realize something that is, meant to be positive on the long term, regardless if it's new routines, new habits, new diet, new, exercise, or anyway, we upgrade our physical condition, or something where we reorganize the way we work, the way we offer a service. It can also be related to career, but in a way indirectly, because Virgo is more like the modus operandi. Virgo is more like the practical work that you do within a larger career, because the career is much more Capricorn. And speaking about Capricorn, Pluto retrograde in the sign of Capricorn. Now we can say that even Pluto himself does hold a very, very imprecise, inexact trine, a wannabe trine with this new moon, which is also really, really important, because it gives us power. It gives us the authority over, our routines and our everyday lives. And Pluto in the sign of Capricorn retrograde does mean that whatever we have decided to, invest our strength into, our authority into, that might serve us. Collectively speaking, that Pluto can represent authority, top-down authority, government institutions, big companies, big corporations, everyone, everything more like, who kind of decides in a centralized way. So the decision is made, at the top, and everyone has to basically uphold it, respect it, live by it. So in that sense, maybe there is a positive decision, something that favors us, something that is meant to solve a problem. Virgo, very strong problem solving energy, or it solves a legal situation, Jupiter, because this Pluto also just as imperfectly trines Uranus. Now, the Pluto and Uranus trine are going to take a totally different configuration after 2026, when Uranus moves into Gemini. Pluto is already going to be in comfortably in Capricorn, sorry, Aquarius. So that will be a very strong intellectual, mental, cerebral Earth trine, which we will see playing out on the world stage. But of course, that will be the subject of a totally different horoscope. But even now, Pluto does hold a kind of trine, so that means a grand Earth trine, but in a very imprecise way. So it's not gonna leave a very big impact on us, but it can mean favorable solutions and windows of opportunities which did not exist until this moment, opening before us due to change of legislation or decision, or authorities or big companies or leaders or whatever are gonna maybe imply new ways of doing things, new measures. Even if it's experimentation Uranus, it can still help us in a really practical way, including financially. Now, as I said earlier, Virgo in itself does rule, service. So this new moon can be a really good energy for everyone who's looking for a job, who's looking for upgrade their, the way they execute their work, whoever is looking for like a routine, like an everyday life transformation and upgrade, so to speak. Everyone who has like certain documents that they need to take care of that stem from the past, of course. Everyone who needs certain kind of issues also stemming from the past to be completed, to be resolved, regardless of their nature. Of course, personally, it depends where this 21 degree of Virgo falls into your chart. Now, another energy that might influence us, and it doesn't really have anything to do with the new moon, aspect wise, is that Venus just moving forward on her shadow path. So, wrapping up the Venus retrograde season, holds a square with Jupiter. So this means whatever we are attracted to might also come as a game changer. And when I say what, of course, this can be like a Venusian matter, a project, something lucrative, something creative in the sign of Leo, of course, something that sparks our interest, our passion, our desire. But it can also be, you know, a person, romance, sensuality. So anything Venusian of nature. And this Jupiter expands it. So we really, really need to be careful not to overdo it. And, you know, speaking about attraction, if that attraction is unusual, if that attraction, may it be a person or whatever, you know, I said earlier, if that is basically outside of our comfort zone, outside of our norm, we must really take into consideration the bigger lessons of this present Venus retrograde. So Venus ended her retrograde officially on the 3rd or 4th of September. So what, and from the 22nd of August, if I'm not mistaken, so the middle end of August, what was, you know, raised as an awareness? Venusian matters, but also Leo matters. So everything that has to do with creativity, inner child, the heart, passion, sensuality, what gives us joy, what makes our sunshine, and Venus value worth. What do we love it? And if we love it, in which way what does love mean for us personally? So all of these themes were, you know, highlighted during this Venus retrograde. So we must apply deep wisdom to it, because that is what this Jupiter square asks of us. It asks us to have the right measure, because we can be desperate, you know, for pleasure or whatever it is. For example, let's say that this Mercury retrograde in the sign of Virgo, along with this new moon, uh, solves or brings a solution to a problem that really, really prevented us from having pleasure or having money or value or our enjoying the fruits of our labor, basically. And you know, now it's possible. Now it's coming into our lives. But this Venus squaring Jupiter would want to have us overdo it, like really indulge in it with great excess, which is, of course, not recommended. Let me just check my notes. Another aspect. Oh, and before I move on, this Venus is also conjunct. Let me just show you. Juno, so Jupiter's wife. This can represent, again, partnerships, and especially the square with Jupiter, unusual partnerships, that which we might not really expect. So we need to be careful to apply the wisdom of this Venus retrograde. And Venus is the ruling planet of Taurus. So Uranus is also our own authenticity, also what is crystal clear within our hearts of hearts. So take it carefully, take it easy. But other than that, it can be really, really like a positive surprise. It's because, you know, this Jupiter expanding that Venus, it's a positive shock, a surprise, a delight. And Uranus trining the new moon, that can represent the element either of our own epiphany, reaching the target, basically, bullseye, or a pleasant surprise that is bestowed upon us. Now, the other energy is that Pallas Athena, at the time of this new moon, just moved into Libra, while another asteroid, Vesta, has left Gemini and moved into the sign of Cancer. So this to me says that whatever is being conjured up at the time of this Virgo new moon, it has to serve us personally and our own sense of justice, Pallas Athena in the sign of Libra, but it also has to serve our loved ones or whoever, whatever we, you know, consider as a loved one in the sign of Cancer, you know, our family, either our partner, children, best friend, you know, whoever. And also, both of these energies can ask us, well, if something really positive, something big happens in our service, in the work, you know, we must make sure that it doesn't eclipse us, it doesn't suck us in, so that we are absent from our family life. Cancer, and Cancer is our family life, our home, everything that has to do with our roots and our shell, that which makes us feel comfortable, makes us feel safe, makes us feel that we belong somewhere. Vesta is the goddess of the sacred flame, protector of the household, protector of the family. So, her symbolism is very, very much at home. While Pellucida is goddess of wisdom and tactics, and in the sign of Libra, it is where the scales of justice, we must make sure that it's equilibrious, that it holds a certain kind of balance. Otherwise, it might be very, very stressful. Otherwise, these two might be at conflict. And the other energy is that dwarf planet Haumea is conjunct uh, dwarf planet Ceres. Ceres is about food. Haumea is innovation. Haumea is the quantum, very much to do with fertility and creational energy. So this can represent a trial of what, when I say trial, quite legally speaking, a legal debate about food, the justice of food. For example, people who are in a rather difficult situation, well, they deserve help. Help in food, help in nurture from the government, from everyone else. But at the same time, this to me also says, now I have a lapsus here, that artificial food, artificial meat, I'm bioengineered. I don't know how the specific term for it, but is that artificial food, artificial meat, artificial nurturing ingredients, are they legal? Are they moral? Are they going to be allowed in a country or not? So there is going to be very strong debate about this. And also genetically modified foods and grains and all of that, those are going to also see a very, very strong debate. But on a positive note, this meeting of Ceres and Haumea can bring forth alternative, which is actually accepted, and where it doesn't necessarily it's not grown in a laboratory, so to speak, but like agriculture, people being encouraged to grow their own food, and this being totally legal, and even help from the state, because Libra is the sign of justice and the law. And what else would I like to mention regarding this new moon? Oh, yes, of course. This is where it doesn't have anything directly to do with the new moon, but as you can see, the North Node in the sign of Aries is conjunct dwarf planet Aries. But this is a long-term aspect. This is where it's going to stay with us for some weeks and months now, and it was with us ever since that North Node entered into the sign of Aries. So this means that there is going to be a strong fight for sovereignty, a strong fight for personal justice, a strong fight for, asserting the individual's sovereign will, legally speaking, especially because they do hold an opposition with Haumea and Ceres. So this Aries makes people fight for their justice in courts of justice if possible, but if not, we might see further protests, further, people demanding that their voice and their sovereign will is heard. And also, this new moon is conjunct a fixed star, which has a lot to do with natural disasters. So this to me says new maybe aid systems or new coping mechanisms with natural disasters are going to be implemented. So again, remember the natural disasters in Hawaii, in Greece, the fires, the devastation and destruction. Maybe this Aries and North Node conjunction will represent that people will demand that their cases, that their situations are going to be resolved the way they want it and not necessarily the way top-down authority wants it, because these planets square Pluto as well. So, and Pluto also squares the south node, which you can see right now on the screen, in the sign of Libra. So this Haumea and Ceres are actually conjunct the south node. So releasing the old justice system, releasing the old legislation, and also all the moral considerations, moral and legal and etc., which the old law, old legislation was based upon. So this new moon, especially in the sign of Virgo, as I said, in my opinion, this will give birth to new methodology that is much more moral, much more, how should I say, ethical, basically, in whatever it needs to solve, whatever situation it needs to solve. And also, Black Moon Lilith is becoming an heretic. Mercury is in the sign of Virgo, or dwarf planet Orcus is also in Virgo. New moon, sun and moon in Virgo. And I don't want to sound, like a conspiracy theorist, but this to me says that another episode of viruses or some kind of illness, some kind of things that spreads, because Black Moon Lilith is an heretic in the sign of Leo. So that means that something might shock us, something might scare us, something might trigger us, collectively speaking. And soon after, Black Moon Lilith moves into Virgo. When the COVID broke out, or when, better said, the COVID was concocted either in the laboratory or in the bath. Sorry about this. It was in the opposite sign of Pisces. Pisces rules everything that has to do with our blood chemistry, research about that, water sign, so the chemicals within our blood. And Pisces rules laboratory, hospitals, and medical institutions that isolate. Virgo is also a medical energy, which rules microbes, which rules, in Ptolemaic sense, every animal that is smaller than a goat. So Virgo is very much associated to the bacteria inside our gut and the living biosphere, small, which rules small animals. So microbes are very much at home here. So Black Moon Lilith is going to activate this. So, I don't want to say the COVID is returning, but we might see after, of course, this new moon, when Black Moon Lilith enters into the sign of Virgo, and then much later on, Mars here, you see, in the sign of Libra. Well, when it reaches 15 degrees of the sign of Libra, it's already traversing on Via Combusta, so the path of fire. Its symbolism is much more, how should I say, combustive, much more fiery. And when it will reach the sign of Scorpio, that means toxicity and everything that has to do with toxic substances. Like when the sewage is overflowing, of course, symbolically speaking. And Mars in the sign of Scorpio, of course, much later on, it will oppose Uranus in the sign of Taurus. Now, these two planets are very, very volatile when they converse in this manner with one another. And also when the COVID was concocted and brewed, as I said, Black Moon was in Pisces, but Uranus was opposing Mars in the sign of Scorpio, a sign that it co-rules with Pluto. So we might see something play out in the world stage, which has to do with either infection, toxins, or some kind of disease or illness, but way after this new moon. So thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for all the love, all the support, all the beautiful comments. If you'd like to support me and my work, you can donate in the PayPal link in the description below. With this being said, I'm wishing everyone a blessed new moon in Virgo, and don't forget to set a seed of intention for the world as well, not just personally or individually. Thank you again. Until next time. Bye for now.